Hello, friends. Today I'm going to be telling you about Luisa Tetrazzini, who's one of my favorite singers. You may have heard of the name because chicken tetrazzini is a famous dish and it was named after her. She was very famous back in the day. I found out about Tetrazzini because her recordings are so extraordinary, despite the fact that they're very, very old and primitive in sound and over 110 years old. Her singing is so much better than anybody today and is the equal of anybody else that I've heard. She's a spectacular singer. And it still sounds beautiful even on these old albums. She came from a very musical family and was taught by her sister, who was a prima donna. And one of the things about Tetrazzini is she was trained in the art of singing in the old-fashioned, really great Italian method of singing, which is pretty much lost today. And she knew a lot of techniques that you no longer hear singers use, and that's why her singing is so extraordinary. She had made it big in South America, which was not a big market today for opera, but was huge back in the day. But what really put her on the map was when she performed at Covent Garden in the early 20th century. She sang La Traviata, which is one of the great Verdi roles, and she got 20 curtain calls, which was like a record for the day. She was compared very favorably to probably the greatest opera diva of all time, Adelina Patti. And Patti became her friend and helped promote her career. She was an extraordinary singer. She was not known for her thespian talents on stage, but her vocalism was so extraordinary that people didn't really care. A little tiny lady who was kind of stout. She had a very famous incident in which she was under contract with the Metropolitan Opera in New York. And she was supposed to stay only performing there, but she was invited to sing in San Francisco on a very famous day, which was the anniversary of the San Francisco earthquake, which had happened in 1904. So this was 1908. And she defied the manager at the Met, and she says, I'm going to go sing. She says, the streets of San Francisco are free, and I shall sing for them. So she went there, and it was the largest crowd that ever came to hear any singer that was not mic'd. There's no amplification. 250,000 people. And you could hear her back a block and a half or more. People could hear her, and so she was very clear way back there. It wasn't the biggest voice in the world, but she had it placed so beautifully. She was very big on her appetites. She loved men and she loved diamonds. She married many times. She was a fabulously wealthy woman, but she lost her entire fortune because of marrying money-grubbing men. And she didn't necessarily pick her men because they were good-looking. One of her companions, they were known as the Trill and the Troll. And also, being married did not keep her from, shall we say, tasting other dishes. She was a real connoisseur of food, and one time she ate so many plates of pasta before a performance, they could not get her corset tied up. So the guy that had to pick her up said it was like picking up 2 Michelin tires, and that she started to giggle, and it pretty much ruined the opera. They got out of character and they just kept giggling. She was the first soprano that was known as a coloratura soprano. It's a very famous term for sopranos, but it's a term for these singers that do this gymnastic singing that she was so famous for, where you do runs very fast going up and down, and you do isolated notes going up and down very quickly. Trills were 2 notes or go between them really quickly. She did all of those things beautifully. And so beautifully that she ended up writing a book, The Art of Singing, with Enrico Caruso, who was probably the greatest tenor of all time. And this is an extraordinary book. And he wrote about certain things, and what she wrote about were things that are pretty much lost today. She talked about a type of breathing called appoggio, with 2 P's and 2 G's, appoggio breathing, which was a technique you just don't hear anymore. And the voices are suffering because of it. It's a breathing technique whereby you don't just use your diaphragm to support the voice, but you use all of the intercostal muscles between the ribs. You expand your rib cage well out, and you hold it, and you sort of do this really controlled breathing that supports the voice and allows you to do amazing things with it. Singers today just don't have this art anymore. The last time you could hear it was probably Birgit Nilsson or Joan Sutherland in the mid to late 20th century. They were still doing this type of breathing, but it's pretty much gone. But she wrote about this, and that's why her singing is so extraordinary. She ran out of money towards the end of her career, and she was singing past the point where she probably should have been singing. But at the end of one of her concerts, when she was very old, she says that I may be old, I may be fat, but I'm still a Tetrazzini. She was a wonderful singer. I'm going to be playing for you Sempre Libera, which is from La Traviata, which was the opera she made it big at in Covent Garden in London and had 20 curtain calls. This is a dazzling piece that shows off all of the coloratura arts of her doing things, and it includes the Tetrazzini variation, which is where she towards the end at a very high note. And then she closes out, and most sopranos, when they do these high notes above high C, they're really high ones, the voice sort of thins out, but not Tetrazzini. It's big, bold, and clear. I think you're going to really love her singing. I think that you might become a fan of Tetrazzini. I hope so.